there will be major spoilers for Star Wars Outlaws, so if you've not completed the story yet, or if you don't care, then continue on. Also, another thing, I am not talking about the gameplay of the game itself, just the story. Star Wars Outlaws is the most average story you can possibly imagine. If I were to compare this to one of the movies, it would be close to Solo, which is no surprise. Solo and Outlaws are pretty much the same thing, in the sense that in due time it will be forgotten about. But with Outlaws, since it's a video game, there'll be more people playing it and stuff like that. So it has that going for it, but the actual story of Outlaws is very, very forgettable. It's not boring, it's just very forgettable, it's very average, it's nothing wrong with it. There's no risk. Like, when I played the game, I was thinking in my head what was going to happen, and it turned out to be true. All the cliches that you would expect from a heist storyline plays through exactly how you think it is, and that's not really fun. To talk about the story itself, it is a heist story where your main character, K-Vess, gets into some trouble with the main villain, and it turns out that the mission that she's on with these people turn out they're Rebel Alliance, and they're trying to get a person in there. Then the main villain is like, "You're a rebel," and then she's like, "No, I'm not." Then now there's a death mark on her, and she takes his ship to, the first explorable planet, where you do a bunch of stuff, and eventually do meet ND5. Somewhat linked to the story, like I would say midway through the story, you meet the second main character of the game. I would say the main side character, the person on the poster of the game, you meet like very late, or somewhat late, which I was surprised about. Like, you have an entire friend group in like the first act of the game. They all get killed, but like you mentioned ND5 and Jalen, and when you meet Jalen, you know that he's a bad guy just from the way he talks, and that's one of the things that I want to get into. Everything that you think is going to happen is going to happen. The first time I meet Jalen, the person who's organizing this heist, it's like, yeah, he's a bad guy. He's going to betray K-Vess. The crew they're going to assemble is going to, fumble in some way, and Jalen's going to take all the money, or something like that. And you're correct. He is a bad guy. The one thing that they didn't do, which I'm surprised they didn't, is they didn't make Slero the main villain. They didn't make him a sympathetic villain. That's something that Disney loves to do. They love making villains sympathetic, and they like making the former good guy a bad guy because it's a twist villain. The real twist villain is the guy that you're working with. But they didn't do that. Both Slero and Jalen are bad guys, but they're doing things in their own way, which I do give them that. That is a somewhat refreshing take on this very cliched story. K-Vess has an entire subplot with her mother, and to me, I do not care about the mother subplot. They have all these flashbacks throughout the game, and I'm like, I don't care about that at all. I just don't care about K-Vess as a character, because K-Vess isn't that interesting of a character. And the only thing that is interesting is her attitude towards the rebellion, because there is a lot of funny moments with the rebellion. I do give the writers of the game that, where they do make her, they do give her a good point, where the Rebel Alliance is like the rest of the syndicates, where if you do good favors for them, they'll put you in higher regards. But that's basically it in terms of the story, because once you do the actual heist, of course the heist gets interrupted by the main villain. Right when you're about to get the money, he shows up and he's like, "I got you." And of course, something gets in the way where the heroes get distracted, or the main villain gets distracted and the heroes can escape. That's exactly what happens. Nothing new. And it turns out, like I said, Jalen's a villain. They double-cross the main characters. And now, I guess, a twist is that it turns out that Slero, the whole Zarek Besh syndicate, is actually a front. And it turns out that Slero is actually an ISB agent. He's working for the Empire. Vader shows up, which is cool. And that's a really cool scene that I like. There's a really cool twist that he's actually an ISB agent. Slero does eventually go down, but the scene where he does go down is actually interesting because it's with Jalen in ND5, because it turns out that Jalen and Slero are brothers, and they're part of the same family, and Slero basically betrayed his family, so Jalen got back, or whatever, 'cause I think the backstory is that Slero programmed ND5 to kill their parents, or I guess family, and so Jalen reprogrammed him to work for him specifically, and not Slero anymore, because he says, like, oh, why does ND5 have a scar on his chest or whatever, implying that, you know, last time we saw him, he was, like, fully functional or whatever. So that's a pretty cool thing to happen, because I think ND5 shoots Slero, and which is a pretty cool scene. But the whole point of that scene is because K-Vess is there, disguised as a stormtrooper, wanting to get ND5 back, because she developed such a friendship with ND5. And so it's a really cool Terminator-esque chase to finally stop ND5 from trying to kill you. And he's now your friend. Jalen gets shot by ND5, you know, Jalen dies, which is expected. And the rest of the game is what you expect. She helps the rebels defeat a Star Destroyer, which is cool to see, but it's very generic. And then the game ends very generically. Nothing that surprising. You don't really learn much from K-Vess as a character. And that's what the story is. And I'm going to talk more about the story, because I can't really explain, you know, cause like I said, the story is very average. There's nothing to me to explain about. So I'm just going to recap the story, because that's all there is to it. It's just a very average story that is very similar to Solo, and the story is going to be forgotten about very quickly. But with all that being said, where do I put that in my rankings then? Star Wars Outlaws goes above Rebels Season 1, but below Solo, which is no surprise there, because I keep mentioning the similarities between the two. This is a good place to put it. Outlaws is not a terrible story. It's just very generic, and it does nothing new. Do you agree or disagree with what I have to say? Because Star Wars Outlaws is a story that just exists, but you may have a different opinion. You may think that's a really good story, or you may think that's a very bad story. Comment down below, because I'm going to go now, so goodbye everyone.